He thought her silence meant defeat, but silence is not surrender. Silence is an execution without blood. Have you ever wondered why a man grows restless when a woman no longer reacts? When her warmth turns to frost, when her eyes no longer tremble under his gaze? It is not love he misses. It is control. For in the echo of her withdrawal, he hears the shattering of his illusion that he was ever the center of her world. Every man beneath his polished reason and measured charm carries a wound, the ancient wound of insignificance, the terror of being unseen. His ego survives only when reflected in the admiration of another. When she stops reflecting, he begins to dissolve. And she, the woman who once built temples out of her giving, knows this game too well. She has lived her life feeding starving egos, mistaking crumbs of attention for devotion. Her heart once danced for approval, her spirit bent to earn belonging. She mistook nurturing for worth. And then one night something inside her snapped quietly, irreversibly. She stopped explaining herself, stopped softening her tone, stopped rescuing what did not wish to be saved. That is when the alchemy began. The feminine detachment that awakens male obsession is not learned through advice columns or soft affirmations. It is born from emotional death, the death of the pleaser, the martyr, the good girl who needed to be chosen. What emerges from her ashes is not a woman seeking love, but a presence stripped of hunger. The siren without song, the witch without mercy. He does not understand it at first. He senses something shift. She no longer mirrors his moods. Her silence has texture now, a stillness that bends the air around her. When he speaks, she listens, but not with the same ache to be understood. She observes like one who has seen through the illusion of desire itself. This is where his mind begins to fracture. Men are conditioned to pursue resistance, but they confuse resistance with challenge. True detachment terrifies them because it reveals their shadow. The anima they tried to dominate now stands before them unbound. He feels the ancient polarity stir within his chest, the yearning to conquer versus the fear of being consumed. He tests her, throws small provocations like stones into a well, a delayed message, a cutting remark disguised as humor, a story of another woman's attention, each act meant to summon her emotional storm. But she does not rise, her eyes stay still, her voice remains unshaken. He feels unseen, and that is where obsession is born. For the masculine psyche, attention is survival. When the feminine gaze withdraws, he enters psychic winter. The mirrors are gone. His reflection fades. Jung called it the descent into shadow, the confrontation with the self stripped of projection. Without her emotional warmth, he must face the void inside him. The void he has always escaped by seducing, dominating, or distracting. But she no longer plays the role. Her silence becomes mythic. In her absence, his mind rewrites stories. He imagines her laughing somewhere else. He dreams of her scent, her indifference, her calm cruelty. He begins to watch her digital ghost, her photos, her movements, her online traces. Every fragment becomes sacred, a relic of what he cannot touch. And she, meanwhile, grows colder still, not out of vengeance, but because she has seen what attachment cost her. The way it made her beg for validation that was never hers to earn. She studies her reflection, not through his eyes, but through her own shadow. She sees how her need to be chosen was only her fear of abandonment disguised as devotion. This is feminine detachment, not the performance of aloofness, but the mastery of emotion through awareness. To feel without reacting, to witness without clinging, to know that loss does not destroy, it reveals. When a woman reaches this state, her presence carries gravity. Men orbit her not because she promises pleasure, but because she threatens dissolution. Her calm becomes erotic. Her absence becomes unbearable. You may think power means control. It doesn't. Power means not needing control at all. Tonight, remember this. When someone tests you, do not justify. When they withdraw, do not chase. When they insult you to provoke a reaction, give none. Let the silence expand until they drown in it. Let them feel the weight of your absence like the closing of a door that will never open again. Because when you detach truly, fully, the spell reverses. The one who tried to own you becomes possessed instead. He does not know when it began, only that the air feels different around her now. Once her laughter carried warmth, a melody that invited him closer. Now it cuts through him like cold wind on exposed skin. Her silence no longer feels passive. It is deliberate, sculpted. She does not look away, she looks through. The masculine psyche, built on conquest, cannot bear to face a woman who no longer needs to be conquered. He calls it arrogance, coldness, manipulation. In truth, it is liberation, the end of his illusion that her softness existed for his validation. He remembers the beginning, how she would bend toward him, adjusting her tone, diluting her power so he would not feel small. She apologized for emotions he provoked. She laughed at jokes that diminished her. She thought patience would earn devotion, thought her empathy would heal him. But empathy turned into chains. When her spirit finally broke, it was not dramatic. There were no tears, no revenge, just distance, the slow retreat of warmth, the silence that replaced explanation. This is the wound of the feminine, to love until she disappears, to nurture until she starves. And when she finally reclaims herself, the world calls it cruelty. But cruelty is only what truth feels like to the unprepared. He begins to sense the shift not through her words but through her stillness. He touches her arm. She does not flinch but does not soften either. She listens to him speak of his day, but her eyes no longer plead for meaning. She does not fill silences with nervous laughter. She lets them stretch, uncomfortable, suffocating, holy. Her detachment awakens the buried hunger in him. The anima he repressed begins to claw from beneath his consciousness. Jung spoke of this as projection collapse, the moment when the image he placed on her disintegrates. He no longer sees a woman. He sees the mirror of his shadow, the reflection of every insecurity he buried under masculine bravado. He will try to regain control. He will promise change, attempt charm, or wield cruelty disguised as wit. He may ghost her to provoke longing, but when she does not respond, the silence will devour him. Because every act of rejection now turns back toward him. His ego consumes itself. In myth, this is where the siren becomes a storm. She is no longer the song that calls ships to shore. She is the tide that drags them under. Her power is not in seduction, but in withdrawal. Men drown not because she lures them, but because they chase what they cannot possess. And yet this is not hatred. It is transcendence. She no longer participates in his drama because she has stepped beyond polarity, beyond the need to be seen, beyond the hunger to be loved by those who never learned to love. She becomes what Jung called the integrated shadow, one who has faced her darkness and no longer fears it. The masculine cannot comprehend this kind of peace. To him, emotion is weakness and control is worth. When faced with a woman who moves from stillness, he feels powerless, because she cannot be manipulated by praise or threat. You know this state when you reach it. It feels like winter in your veins, not emptiness, but clarity. You see through games that once entangled you. Words that used to wound now dissolve on contact. You no longer chase understanding, because your silence speaks a language older than speech. And he senses it. He feels your absence even when you stand before him. He will ask what's wrong, but you will not explain. He will accuse you of indifference, but you will not defend. You have learned that explanation is a form of begging, and you no longer beg. Tonight, remember this. The more detached you become, the more he projects onto you. His obsession grows not because you are cruel, but because you are no longer accessible. You have stepped out of his emotional economy, and his ego cannot survive without transaction. Let him spiral. Let him feel the silence press against his chest until he mistakes it for love. Let him learn that your absence is not punishment, it is revelation. Because the moment you detach, the balance shifts. He who once held power through your need now kneels before his own craving. And you simply watch. He begins to unravel in small, invisible ways. The rhythm of his life fractures. His confidence trembles beneath the weight of uncertainty. Her silence, once merely inconvenient, now feels like judgment, a mirror reflecting the parts of himself he worked so hard to hide. He does not understand that she no longer plays within the same dimension of need. He still speaks in the language of transaction, praise for obedience, affection for submission, but she has transcended that dialect. Her stillness speaks of a truth he cannot name. She has become sovereign. The masculine wound now bleeds openly. It is not her rejection that torments him, but her indifference. Rejection is personal. Indifference is existential. It tells him he never mattered, that the meaning he built upon her reaction was an illusion. Without her emotional labor feeding his sense of importance, he faces a void that no conquest can fill. He tries to recover the pattern, sends messages dipped in nostalgia, mentions her name casually to mutual friends, scrolls through her photos like an addict searching for remnants of a lost high, every attempt to summon her spirit on. Lie deepens his hunger. He realizes he cannot recreate the warmth that once surrounded him because that warmth was not love. It was her empathy, and she has withdrawn it. The dark feminine has no interest in punishment. She has seen how revenge still ties her to the one who wronged her, so she chooses the clean burn of detachment. She does not delete him, does not curse him, does not explain. She simply ceases to be accessible. In myth, this is the moment the witch retreats into the woods. The villagers call her dangerous because they no longer understand her language. She does not beg for belonging. She communes with the unseen, her own instincts, her solitude, her sovereignty. And he, the wandering man, feels her energy everywhere. In the scent of rain, in the echo of quiet rooms. He calls it missing her, but it is not her he misses, it is his reflection in her eyes, the part of him that felt alive under her gaze. The Jungian truth is brutal. What we love most in another is the part of ourselves we have not yet claimed. He loved her depth because it revealed his emptiness. He loved her mystery because he feared his own shallowness. He called her unpredictable when in truth she was evolving. Every attempt to control her was a desperate act of self-preservation. And now that she is gone, not physically, but psychically, he is forced into shadow confrontation. He must face the anima he tried to dominate. The feminine within him that he exiled now rises as obsession, haunting him through memory and dream. Meanwhile, she becomes something beyond desire, not untouchable, inevitable. The woman who has walked through emotional annihilation no longer fears solitude. She carries an aura that commands reverence. Men feel it before they see it, that invisible field of calm authority, born from no longer needing anything. You, too, will know this transformation when it comes. The moment you stop chasing closure, stop explaining why you are distant, stop apologizing for your silence. The moment you realize peace is not the absence of emotion, but the absence of reaction. He will feel it immediately. The energetic cord will snap. He will sense that his grip on your psyche has loosened. He may return with declarations, promises, or tears. Do not confuse this for love, it is ego withdrawal. When a man realizes he can no longer feed on your attention, he calls it heartbreak. Stay silent. Stay gone. Your power is not in punishing him, but in maintaining your stillness while he unravels. Do not answer the message that begins with "I've been thinking." Do not be lured back into the orbit of apology and reassurance. You owe him nothing, not even resentment. Tonight, sit in silence. Feel how peaceful the absence of chaos truly is. That peace is your power. Guard it like sacred fire. Because once you embody detachment, his obsession becomes his initiation. He will either descend into self-destruction or rise into awareness. Either way, it is no longer your burden. He begins to study her absence as if it were scripture. Every detail of her becomes an artifact, the cadence of her voice, the memory of her stillness, the way she once looked at him as though she saw through every mask he wore. He replays moments that once seemed insignificant, searching for the instant she began to disappear. But she was not disappearing, she was shedding. A man does not fall into obsession because a woman withholds affection. He falls because her detachment forces him to see himself. She no longer provides the reflection that maintained his illusion of power. Without her, his image dissolves into fragments: the confident man, the dominant lover, the savior, all illusions collapsing into dust. The dark feminine does not chase, explain, or rescue. She observes. She watches as the ego disintegrates in the presence of silence. Jung called this the confrontation with the shadow, when everything repressed returns with merciless precision. Her distance becomes the catalyst for his descent. He begins to project. He calls her cold, heartless, unfeeling. Yet his accusations are only confessions. What he calls cruelty is the pain of seeing his own dependence exposed. He once mistook her compassion for weakness. Now he realizes it was restraint. She had the power to destroy his illusions long before she did. She simply chose silence over spectacle. The male wound festers in the space where her validation used to be. He wonders why she no longer reacts, why she doesn't fight to explain, why her calm unnerves him more than her anger ever did. He does not know that when a woman stops reacting, she stops identifying with her pain. She becomes the witness, not the participant. And this witnessing terrifies him, because she no longer exists within the story he writes about her. She has stepped beyond his narrative. He cannot cast her as the villain or the lover because she has become something else, an archetype, a mirror of the divine. Indifference that governs all endings. The siren, the witch, the shadow queen, names given by men who could not understand the silence of women who no longer needed them. Each title an accusation born from fear. Each myth a warning whispered to keep women from awakening. But she awakens anyway. She learns that withholding emotion is not cruelty, but conservation. She no longer spends her energy proving her softness to those who weaponize it. Her love is no longer a performance. It becomes a choice. And most of all, it becomes conditional upon respect. He, however, continues his descent. The more she withdraws, the louder his mind grows. He tries to replace her with noise, other women, distractions, accomplishments. But nothing soothes the ache, because what he craves is not her body, but the peace that surrounded her presence. Her detachment has become the standard against which he measures every encounter. No one else carries that same stillness, that same invisible command. You may think he will forget, but no man forgets the woman who confronted him with his shadow and did not flinch. No man forgets the silence that stripped him bare. You must understand this. Obsession is not love. It is the psyche's attempt to reclaim control. When he cannot possess you, he tries to understand you. When he cannot understand you, he begins to worship you. You become myth. And in myth, truth is distorted into desire. Do not return to correct him. Let him build his altar from delusion. It is not your role to guide him through his darkness. You are not his lesson. You are the mirror that revealed it. Your detachment is not an act. It is evolution. It is what remains after every illusion dies. The woman who has met her own shadow no longer fears rejection, because she knows her worth does not shrink when unseen. Tonight, stand in that truth. Feel the air around you, how still it becomes when you stop chasing meaning. This is the power men sense but cannot name, the quiet confidence that draws and terrifies in equal measure. Let him linger in the tension of what he cannot reach. Let him learn that your silence was never about him. It was about freedom. Because once you detach completely, obsession becomes the only language he can speak. And in that language, every word is a confession of his powerlessness. The cycle repeats in his mind like a fevered dream. He wakes at night and feels the echo of her absence like static in the dark. He reaches for his phone, hesitates, scrolls through old messages, reads her last words again, the ones that sounded calm, almost indifferent. He wonders how someone can disappear so cleanly, how detachment can look so effortless. He does not realize it took her years to build that silence. The male ego cannot process endings without closure. It seeks narrative to anchor pain, but she left him with none. No explanation, no grand confrontation, just stillness. And in that stillness, his mind turns violent. It begins to devour itself, searching for reasons, for flaws, for proof that she was the villain. But deep down, he knows she simply outgrew him. That knowing becomes the slow poison. He sees her again one day, not in reality but in passing, perhaps online, perhaps through someone's words. She looks untouched. The same calm, the same poise, the same quiet sovereignty. She carries no trace of grief. Her energy no longer pleads, it reigns. This is what terrifies him most. She has healed without him. Feminine detachment in its purest form is an initiation. It strips away the performance of empathy and reveals what was always hidden. That emotional containment is the highest form of power. The world tells women to be nurturing, to explain, to forgive endlessly. But when she stops, when she withdraws the current of her energy, the illusion of male dominance collapses. He senses this collapse like a tremor in his soul. Every word he tries to send feels inadequate. Every memory of her presence feels like an accusation. Because she no longer reacts, he must confront the truth. He was never her master. He was a guest in her kingdom, tolerated only until he mistook hospitality for ownership. And now she sits upon her throne of stillness, untouchable. In Jungian terms, she has integrated her animus. The inner masculine that once sought external validation now resides within her. She no longer seeks protection, for she has become her own fortress. She no longer seeks recognition, for she has seen herself clearly. He, however, remains trapped in projection. His obsession is his unclaimed anima, the feminine within that he refuses to honor. So he chases women who echo her silence, who remind him of her distance, hoping to conquer in others what he could not in her. But it never works. Every new conquest ends the same way, with the quiet reminder of what he lost. Not her, but the version of himself that felt whole in her presence. Meanwhile, she moves through the world differently. Detached does not mean unfeeling, it means sovereign. She still feels deeply, but nothing rules her. Her emotions rise and fall like tides, never clinging, never begging. She can love, but she does not lose herself. She can walk away and it does not break her. You will know when you have reached this state. It arrives not with triumph but with stillness. The craving for validation dissolves. The desire to prove fades. You stop chasing closure because you realize there was never anything to close. He will sense it too. He will test the boundary one last time. A message sent late, a nostalgic memory, a small attempt to reopen the door. And you will feel the old reflex to respond, to explain, to soothe. But you won't. You will let the silence stand heavy and sacred. Because now you understand. Reacting would mean returning to the version of yourself that needed to be understood. You are no longer that woman. Let him ache. Let him spiral through the ruins of his own illusion. That is his initiation, not your responsibility. Every obsession he feels now is the echo of his unintegrated self. Every sleepless night is a mirror of the emptiness he once covered with dominance. Your detachment is the medicine his ego cannot swallow. It forces him toward individuation, toward confronting the parts of himself he projected onto you. Whether he ascends or collapses is irrelevant. The lesson has already been delivered. And you walk forward, silent, unapologetic, untouched by his chaos. You do not forgive, you do not avenge, you do not explain, you transcend. Because the final act of power is not in proving who you are, but in never needing to prove it again. The woman who knows her worth does not argue, she vanishes.